the other thing is China is just freaking huge. It's really really big, and we got like a little bit of a glimpse of like the map today. Is this like the largest map you guys have ever put together? Like, where does this fit as far as like Total War, like grand map scale?
It's difficult to say. I mean, we've had, I think, maps that cover larger geographical scales, obviously from Western Europe all the way through to the Near East. But yeah, in terms of just a single block of landmass, it's huge. It's the largest single contiguous piece of landmass I think we've represented in a Total War game, and it's massive. It's impressive. And at the beginning, most of the factions start off in the north. The sort of civilized, tamed part of China, and there's a whole lot of land to explore and to conquer along the way. It's epic.
I've played a lot of Dynasty Warriors games. That's where I get most of my understanding of the Three Kingdoms, like historically from. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of people that were involved historically, like in the records, like family dynasties and things like that. How deep did you guys get as far as like selecting what historical characters you were gonna like pull into this game?
We did a lot of research. Obviously, there are thousands of characters referenced in the records and in the romance. There are some obvious ones that we couldn't not have, like Liu Bei, who you played as today, who is sitting behind me. If we were to omit him, that would be craziness. So there's a couple of key players who we had to have, and some of their subordinates and people who sort of appeared throughout the book. But I mean, lots of characters, even sort of ones who briefly appear, they had their moment in the sun, right? And I think in the end we had maybe 300 unique name characters, or 400. I'm trying to get double check on that, but there's a lot of characters. You won't see them at the start, but they will manifest themselves over the course of a campaign. And whittling down the shortlist is quite difficult, obviously, but some people are more significant than simply appearing for a page or what have you. And it's tons of them.
So is that like 300 or so unique characters, each with their own abilities and interactions and relationships with all these other characters that you guys had to sort of comb through?
Yeah. So obviously, to do that kind of detail would have been mental. So we gave the best treatment to the legendary characters, we're calling them. Who appear with like a golden name when they appear in the game, so they're special. These guys have custom art, really bespoke abilities, and unique voices, like different voice sets. As these start becoming a bit more obscure, then they'll still have their unique traits, so their innate personality profiles, and their background, their career trait, we call it, that helps define who they are. But the star treatment is reserved for, I think, 30 or so major players.
Nice. It's really interesting to see this shift in the Total War games towards characters in a lot of ways, because at least to me, I've never really had much attachment to the characters in the games, because I've always seen them as pawns for my own sort of Machiavellian machinations or dreams of like ruling and conquering. I've always like seen them as like stepping stones or tools to get where I'm going as far as world domination is concerned.
Well, that's a shame. I mean, I think I've always formed interesting attachments with my characters in Total War, but like what we've done now is we've used the excuse, let's say, of Romance of the Three Kingdoms and its strong tilt towards characters in order to sort of create systems that help support those stories that players have been creating in their imaginations, I think, since the series first started. So in the past, maybe your faction heir would get defeated in battle, and you'd make a personal note to go and defeat the person who did that. Now the game will actually recognize these things, and grudges will form between characters. Their relationships will dive. They may become nemesis to one another, at which point it becomes like impossible to have them in battle against each other without them going into a rage, that sort of thing. So we try to recognize these stories the players have been creating previously and actually systemize them.
Spicing it up with a little drama here and there. Yeah, nice. So what are some of the other new features that players are going to see in Three Kingdoms that they haven't seen in previous Total War entries?
Well, continuing on from the sort of the characterization aspect, something we're really proud of, and which is new for the series, is the fact that characters are no longer tied to a faction. Like previously, a character existed as part of a faction, part of its roster, and that was it. If the faction died, they were gone. Characters are now a bit more transient. They can leave factions through dissatisfaction or be captured post-battle by their opponent. And so they're kind of fickle in that regard. They can enter other factions. You may form a grudge against a faction, in which case that guy will never ever join that faction under any circumstance. Or they may form a fondness for that faction, so they're more inclined to go towards it. So if you treat someone well, if they have a friend in your faction, then when you destroy their commander or whatever, he's more likely to come over to you. So this churn of characters is something very new and very exciting for us.
What are some of the what are some of the new units that are coming to the game that players are going to be able to add to their army this time around?
Well, I mean, there's only so many units that ever existed in history. You know, there's certain configurations of weapons and mounts and that sort of thing. So I can't say it's entirely unseen before, but as we discussed earlier, there's the sort of the 5 elements, and each one has its own battlefield aspect. So fire, for example, is shot cavalry, spear cavalry that will charge down enemies. The earth, the authority commander units are sword cavalry, more noble, who ride into battle with sword, shield, that sort of thing. We have the metal aspect, which is sword and shield units who fight on foot. The cunning aspect, so the water, they bring to the field archers, crossbowmen, which is obviously a very powerful ranged unit, and artillery as well. And then wood, which is the sort of the champions, the local heroes. They are sort of spear-wielding, champions, like tough, tanky units. And so the combination of these 5 in battle, certain characters can use them more effectively than others. So you're there finding new configurations that will best serve your tactical interests.
So it's not so much new units as it's just
There's new ways of playing with them, especially with the new retinue system. So a character can have 6 units under his or her sort of command, and certain characters, like I say, will have a better control over certain units, and so it's finding that sweet spot, that sweet balance.